Hello and welcome. This is View from the Top. I'm Modele Sharafai, so thanks for joining us. I'll begin today's program with a quote from the Holy Bible, and I'll take this from Proverbs chapter 22, verse 29. Seest thou a man diligent in his business? He shall stand before kings, he shall not stand before mean men. That, ladies and gentlemen, will be the story of award-winning and multi-talented photographer, Mr. Sunmi Smart Cole, who I'm delighted to have as guest today on View from the Top. I call him SSC, and I thank him for joining us. Thank you for joining us, SSC.
Thank you for having me.
Sunmi Smart Cole is best known for his prolific work in the society pages of reputable newspapers, but as I've found out over the years, there are many sides, many interesting sides to him. And here are a few other things I'd like you to know about my guest. Born on September 25, 1941 in Port Harcourt, Sunmi Smart Cole was self-taught. He began his career as an elementary school teacher at the age of 15 and went on to become an apprentice architectural draftsman at 17. He practiced his trade as a draftsman for a few years and was at various times a musician, artist manager and barber. He began his study of photography in 1976 at Foothill College, California, and staged his first photography exhibition at Stanford University's Coffee House on March 5, 1978. He has since staged his exhibitions at several other places, including in Lagos, Hong Kong, London, Brasilia, and Belgrade. He is a recipient of the This Day Lifetime Achievement Award, among several other awards. You know, with a potential career as a senior draftsman at a California company, what made you enroll at a community college to study photography? I
realized at one time that all my life I had been revolved like around arts, whether it's designing houses, playing music as a drummer, cutting hair as a barber. And then in California, I actually was hired because they said I had unusual talents. Architectural drafting, electronics drafting, technical illustrating. And then I figured, I used to sit in with some bands in California. Doing all that, I said, well, this everything arts. I then figured, I said, let me try and do something that would actually bring in, rope in everything, you know, and I decided to go for photography. In 1976, June, I was on a visit, on holiday, on visit to Dublin. I went from Dublin to London, then to Lagos. And the more I saw things, the more I felt like documenting things. Like they were rebuilding Macaulay Street in Yaba. And I wished I had a camera to document some of those things. When I got back, I went to register in a junior college. But I never went to school full-time. It was part-time. I arranged with my boss to allow me to work during my lunch hours. So at weekends, on Saturday, Fridays, for instance, most Americans would have gone to gamble or to play golf or to, at least they went to play, gamble or to ski. And Saturday Friday afternoons, the lab would be empty. So that's when I went to do my work undisturbed. And in less than 2 years, I was able to have my first exhibition.
Tell me, what makes a good photographer?
A good photographer must be able to see photographically. I say, what is that? Things that people neglect. You see things that just walk away, don't look at them twice. A good photographer, especially a documentary photographer, or a photographer who actually recognizes that photography is an art. You have to be able to compose your pictures, just like a painter would go on his brush and compose and make sure that you don't centralize your main subject and things like that.
Speaking of main subjects, what do you like to photograph the most, nature or people?
I prefer abstracts. than nature and people. But not just taking photographs of, say, people posing for me. They say people doing things unusual. Like there's a famous photograph of mine that I have of a mobile tailor with his hand like this. He looked hungry, as if the world was falling, you know, everything was collapsing on him. And he looked hungry, and I call it hard times. Then there's one of a man loading bags of flour into a truck. I call that one Sweat and Tears. It goes on and on.
Who influenced you the most as a photographer, and how?
An American photographer called Ansel Adams. I had an instructor called Mike Ivaninsky. He was of Russian descent. He passed away less than a year, 2 years ago. God bless his soul. He took me serious, took my work seriously. He said I had a good eye. In fact, one time he begged me for a small photograph I took of my wife, but the way I printed it had interested him, and he took it. And there was a time he also taught me how to print for the black skin. He was an instructor, but but many people, especially people who work in labs in places like Europe and America, don't know how to print for the black skin. Because if you were to meter your palm will always give you 18% gray. And meter a white person's palm is the same. Black person's palm is the same. So you need to master all that using what we call the zone system, which was discovered and popularized by a man called Ansel Adams, the world's most famous photographer. He was an American. He lived in the Yosemite Valley for many years, photographing, you know, sunrise, sunset, everything, trees, rocks, and everything. He was the first photographer to make the cover of Time magazine. So in short, I belong to the Ansel Adams School of Photography. You
were let go from an architectural firm in Lagos in 1957 after they discovered your lack of paper qualifications. How important is paper qualification?
I had started educating myself. It's a self-education from the age of 15 when I became a teacher. I had to go to where they sold second-hand clothing, to buy old books, magazines, and made sure I spent something like 7 pence or so a week to buy a copy of Time magazine. And somebody had said that if you could read cover to cover, Time magazine cover to cover, it's like reading a new textbook every week. But so I spoke well compared with, that's according to the people who were the potential employers. And they said I looked neat. At that time I used to wear mostly short-sleeve shirts. I had myself educated by listening to broadcasters like you. In the old days, we had people like Abba Zoro, Emmanuel Omashola, Shegun Lushola, Ralph Opara, Ike Nandaguba, people, Keida Adioshun, Christopher Kolade. They were all broadcasters trained by the BBC. I would wake up in the mornings by 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock, to listen to the BBC World Service, listen to the broadcasters, continuity announcers even, and then our own newsreaders to pick up words, because I had read everything like the Bible 3 times over, from Genesis to Revelations, in search of words, not religion. But how do you pronounce those words? That was why I had to listen to shortwave radio at the time. We didn't have television. So even when the television came, only very few people had them. And only very few, much later, almost anybody was allowed to go on air. And that was, continuity announcers in the past were properly trained.